Welcome back to Fireside Giants with your boys, Alex and Anthony. Today we're looking at the rookie class for the New York Giants, 2022 rookie class, and how they've contributed, giving them some grades up to this point in the season at the bye week, week 9. They made a pretty big impact. Obviously the Giants had, 11 draft picks in this most recent draft, and they plugged a lot of positions, and some of them, have underwhelmed, some of them have overwhelmed, some of them have been injured, and the Giants are still going through this rebuilding process, still laying the bricks to the foundation, and that's exactly why Joe Schoen elected not to go hard at the trade deadline and save his selections and really look forward to the future, which I think is definitely a justifiable cause and ultimately probably the right thing to do instead of mortgaging what you have now on trying to win immediately. And we know this is a rebuild. We know what they're trying to do. We know they're still trying to get rid of some bad contracts and whatnot. And those rookie deals ultimately allow you to, move on from more expensive players and plug them with guys that you draft. And that's part of laying the brick in the foundations. But this rookie class this year has been pretty solid. I've been pretty impressed with their contributions up to this point. So we're going to take a look at each individual one, Anthony. Before we do, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some of these rookies. Now, some of them have made an instant, immediate impact, and they've been really great. Others have struggled, as most rookies tend to do. But for the most part, it's been a very strong and impressive first draft class by Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I think that, Joe Schoen's track record speaks for itself, right? His history over in Buffalo, working with Brandon Beane. I mean, they were great at finding gems in those middle rounds. And so far, after, half of a season with this first rookie class from Joe Schoen, it looks like he found another set of gems in those middle to late rounds. So I'm really excited. And, as you just mentioned, the trade deadline passed. The Giants made no moves. All they ever did was traded away Kadarius Toney to get more draft picks. So that should only increase our confidence in the future of the New York Giants as Joe Schoen continues to stockpile picks, especially in those middle rounds, to continue to add talent and build the foundation of the Giants. So this class right here is the first layer of the foundation, and so far looks like it's a very sturdy layer to the foundation, and I'm excited to see in the future what Joe Schoen can continue to build through the draft with many draft classes forthcoming.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the first one here. Obviously, the 5th overall pick in Kayvon Thibodeaux. He's played in 6 games, has a sack to his name, but his impact has really come in the fourth quarter. We know he's kind of coined himself the closer. And, against Baltimore, against Green Bay, he really stepped up and made some big plays down the stretch, Jacksonville as well. So, we've seen the flash. We've seen the potential of Kayvon Thibodeaux. His first step is elite. He's quick. He's strong. He can seal the edge in the run game. He's got everything you want in a star pass rusher as long as he can stay healthy. I think he's trending in that direction. So at this point in time, I'm going to give him a B+ just because he missed a couple of games to that injury and we haven't seen the full sample size. And I also would like to see him be a little bit more consistent during the first 3 quarters of the game. He shows up in that fourth quarter, but I'd like to see him also make more of an impact early in the middle of games instead of just kind of saving it all up for the fourth, which obviously is important, but sometimes your team needs you beginning of games, and he just is trying to save that energy, and I understand that, but I think that kind of comes with building that stamina for the NFL, more physical, a lot more intense. So personally, I think B+ is pretty fair for Kayvon Thibodeaux, having missed a little bit of time, but ultimately I think he's elevating his game. He could end up with an A- by the end of the season if he continues at this pace. Obviously, across 296 total snaps, he has 17 total pressures, including a sack, 3 quarterback hits, 13 hurries. He also has 2 batted passes, both of them coming against the Green Bay Packers, and 9 tackles. He's missed 2 tackles, so a 15.4% missed tackle rate up to this point, but otherwise he's been pretty strong. Only 1 penalty. He's really gotten away. Or rather, other teams have gotten away with holding him a lot, and he's trying to get some of those calls. But as a rookie, sometimes you're not going to get those. But up to this point, I've been very impressed and very pleased with his production so far, and I think that he's going to be a fantastic young player for this team moving forward. So I think a B+ is pretty fair at this point in time. What do you think?
I'd say a B+. I agree with that grade for Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think he's still putting it all together, right? As you mentioned, he's showing up in the fourth quarter. He's making some plays, but he's not making all of those plays on such a consistent basis from quarters 1 through 4, which I think is interesting to note because he is a rookie. He was a 5th overall pick, and he did miss some time at the beginning of the season. He had to work his way back into the lineup after a knee injury, which he could still slightly be feeling the effects of, if we don't know. But I think that, for a rookie to step in, make the impact that he's made so far, it is tremendous. It is very impressive that he's been able to make that impact. But that's kind of what you expect with a 5th overall pick who's a pass rusher and who was considered a generational talent his freshman year in college, right? So with Kayvon Thibodeaux, he's been phenomenal in my eyes. I love what he's brought to the defense, the pass rushing boost that he provided the team when he returned from his injury. But he does need to improve. He needs to be more consistent, and that's what the second half of the season is going to be about. He's got this bye week. He can take a look at the film, reevaluate, put some things together that he learns in the film room, and tackle that second half of the season with some force. And I think that's going to happen. I'm predicting a really big second half of the year for Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think this first half was about him kind of settling in, getting adjusted to the NFL game, going up against these big, burly offensive tackles, these extreme specimens that he's never faced before. And now, over the second half of the season, he's gotten used to this. Maybe he can start to put that all together, add some new pass rushing moves, some new counters, get that step back in his repertoire, that first step that he would defeat offensive tackles with at Oregon. And I think that's going to be a really solid second half. So, yeah, I love what he's brought to the table so far. I love how he's played in the fourth quarter especially. But in order to add that consistency and be more of a four-quarter player, I think that he just needs to put a couple more pieces together and really make an impact over the second half of the year, and I think he will. So by season's end, this could be an A+ rating for all we know, right? He could end up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year because over the second half of the season, he ends up with 8 sacks. That's totally possible, and I could see that happening. Right now, I'd give it a B. He's been solid, but he hasn't completely blown us away with, multi-sack performances or anything. But you can tell he's getting there. He's starting to put it all together. And once he does, it's going to be very scary for opposing offensive tackles.
Absolutely. I think he is putting it all together. You're seeing him kind of get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more accustomed and adjusted to the NFL with every passing game. So that's definitely a good sign. And speaking of progress, Evan Neal was making tremendous progress before going down with that MCL sprain. 22 years old. The guy is 6'7", 350 pounds for a 22-year-old. That is unheard of. That is a monster of a human being. Started out the season a little bit tough. Obviously had some issues. He's given up 5 sacks this season. 3 of them came against Dallas and Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. So, he has struggled in some games, but over the last 2 games, he hasn't given up a sack, only 2 quarterback hurries and 3 total pressures. Now, he only played in 19 snaps against Jacksonville, but that Baltimore game was his best game of his career across 8 weeks or 7 weeks that he's played. So that's definitely a good sign that he's taking a big step forward. I think Evan Neal right now, I'd probably give him a C+ because he started out a little slow, but he's gradually, pretty quickly, not gradually, he's pretty quickly elevating that grade. He could probably finish with a B, depending on how he comes back and if he's, feeling good and that knee's okay after the MCL sprain. But Evan Neal, I saw a lot of good progress from him. He's a dominant run blocker. He's a big body. You can easily run behind him. We missed his presence significantly against the Seattle Seahawks. But, otherwise, his pass blocking has been a little bit spotty at times. He has improved in that regard over the last couple of weeks, and that's a definitive good sign that he's making good progress, and that's all we really wanted to see for him. He might end up having a better campaign than Andrew Thomas did during his rookie season, so that could be a pretty positive sign that his progress over time will be even more speedy, which obviously the Giants could use to have those 2 bookend tackles. But, what are your thoughts about Evan Neal and the progress he was making before the injury?
Yeah, the progress he was making before the injury was very encouraging, and I'm hoping he's ready to come back right as soon as this bye week ends. But if he needs another week or so, that's totally fine. I want him fully healthy before he returns to the field because I want to see him continue to make that progress, not step back in, be hampered by an injury, and struggle to get back to how he was playing right before the injury. But for Evan Neal, if I had to give it a grade, his performance through these games, I'd probably give him a D+, C-. I don't think he's been very good, but hold your horses. That's not me calling him a bust. That's not me saying that he's a terrible football player. I probably would have given the same grade to Andrew Thomas through the first 8 or so games of his career because he was kind of terrible as a rookie. And we knew that that was going to be the case. We know that offensive tackles step into the NFL and usually struggle immensely. It takes them sometimes 1 to 2 to 3 years to put it all together, as we've seen with Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, right now, the best offensive tackle in football this season. But he struggled a lot in his rookie year. He was bad his rookie year. Year 2, he started to put it together over the second half of the season. So for Evan Neal, yes, he's struggling through the first half of the season. That's okay. I expected that. Rookie growing pains are abundant for offensive tackles, and I expect him to continue to have his fair share of struggles over the second half of the year when he returns from the injury. But we have seen progress, and that's key. So that's why I'm not going to give him a D. I'm going to give him a C. I think because the progress that we've seen, we're starting to see him get his play towards average level, which is really good for a rookie. Any rookie offensive lineman that steps in and plays at an average level, that's solid. That's really all you can ask for from a rookie most of the time. So he has been poor for the majority of the year, especially that Dallas game. That one sticks out like a sore thumb. That was just a pitiful performance from Evan Neal. But again, he was facing a very tough matchup, a really good defense, his first primetime game of his career. That was a tough one for him, and he struggled. And you expect a rookie to struggle in that situation. But going forward, I think that Evan Neal is absolutely going to pick it up, start to make that progress. Those rookie growing pains are going to diminish, and he's going to prove himself of being worthy of that top 10 pick. And I absolutely know he will do that. So, again, it's been a struggle through the first portion of the season, but that's kind of expected. All offensive tackles usually struggle as rookies. Give him more time, and I think this grade of a C can definitely improve to a B by season's end. And I think when you go into year 2 with Evan Neal and you have a couple more foundational pieces around him with another solid Joe Shane draft class, you're talking about turning this really young but mammoth of a man into an absolute monster on the Giants offensive line. So again, I'm going to give him like a D- or a C- or a D+, somewhere in that range. But give him more time. He's going to improve, and he's going to be a special player for the Giants.
Yeah, I agree. And looking at our second round pick, Wan'Dale Robinson hasn't really made much of an impact given he was dealing with an MCL sprain himself that he suffered against the Titans in week 1. But otherwise, we've seen the flash that he can provide this offense. The problem is we don't have enough players that, actually command attention, and we don't have enough true pass sets to get him as involved as we'd like. No, I do think there's ways to scheme him the football using gadget methods and whatnot, but ultimately, when you're locking down the box and you're locking down the shorter portions of the field, that's where Wan'Dale Robinson really thrives, and they can't get on the ball there because, whether your right tackle is injured, or your left guard is injured, or your tight end is injured, we just don't have enough talent to really open up this offense just yet. And he's supposed to be in a spread offense that really gives these playmakers space to work in the open field. And right now we're having to condense things because we're using those play actions, those bootlegs, or, having to utilize some backup tight ends and Tanner Hudson and just get the ball out quickly and run the football. So, condensing the field. And that's really not what Wan'Dale Robinson is going to play into in the future. Our offense is going to change dramatically over the next year. So right now, Wan'Dale's impact, it's hard to really gauge. I'll give him just an average C+ because I think that right now we haven't seen his full potential, and they really aren't able to utilize him the way that we want. But I do think that he has showed enough of a spark that gets me extremely excited for his potential for the future. What are your thoughts on Wan'Dale Robinson? Honestly, I don't even think it's worthwhile giving him a grade because he just hasn't played enough, and we haven't seen this offense as it needs to be with him in it. But what are your thoughts on him? Just the short amount of sample size you've seen. Is there any optimism for his future?
I think there's plenty of optimism, and I think the number one thing you said there that I agree with is that we have yet to see him play at his full potential or even be utilized to his fullest extent. Because when you look at the New York Giants offense, the one that they're running is not the one that they want to be running. They want to do a whole lot more with this offense, but they just can't. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the talented receivers. They're hobbled at the tight end position with Daniel Bellinger, who I know we're going to get into. He's out for an extended amount of time. And the offensive line, we've got a couple nice pieces, but for the most part, injuries and poor performances across the board. So it's been a real struggle for the Giants to put together the offense that they want to. They're trying to play that offense that just capitalizes on defenses, solid play, any turnovers. If the offense can just capitalize and maintain the ball and score some touchdowns here and there, that's enough to win. And that's how the Giants have gotten to 6-2. But it's not like they've gotten there because their offense is some high-powered, well-oiled machine, right? And at times, it does look that way. We've had some long, extensive drives from Daniel Jones put together, and Wan'Dale Robinson has definitely made his impact on this offense so far. But we need more, and we're not going to get that this year, unfortunately. And that's why Joe Shane traded away Kadarius Toney and stockpiled some more picks for next year, because he understands that in order to build this offense, it's a multi-year project. So for Wan'Dale Robinson, no, we're not seeing him used to his fullest extent. We're not seeing him have an amazing breakout just yet, but we're seeing him utilize, and we're seeing when he's called upon, he makes the plays. I haven't seen him drop too many passes. I haven't seen him fumble the ball. I haven't seen him, run the wrong route, nothing like that. He's doing what he's asked. He's just not being asked to do too much because the Giants can't do too much on offense. So going forward, first half of the year, very small sample size. Wan'Dale Robinson dealt with an injury. He's back, looks really good, has scored a touchdown. That's more than we could say for Kenny Golladay or Kadarius Toney. They're in their times with the New York Giants. So that's something that you got to give credit to Wan'Dale Robinson for. He actually reached a blue end zone. So going forward for the second half of the year, I think that Wan'Dale Robinson, his target share is going to continue to increase. His usage in the offense will continue to increase. The Giants understand that he is a very special and talented player. He could be a game changer for them. They just need to start utilizing him a little bit more, and they will. So again, kind of similar to what we said with Evan Neal. It's more of a multi-year project there. Evan Neal struggled in the first half of the season. I expect him to improve over the second half. Same thing with Wan'Dale, but it's really years 2 and 3 that I expect these players to take that significant jump, start to turn heads, and be real players in the New York Giants offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at our third round picks here, there's two picks there, so we'll kind of bunch them together: Joshua Zudoo and Cordell Flot. So Zudoo is definitely young. He's definitely raw as a player. 23 years old. He plugged in that left guard for Ben Bredesen last week. Gave up 6 total pressures, a sack, 2 QB hits, and 3 hurries. So he really, really kind of struggled. But on the season, 3 sacks and 12 pressures in total, over 184 offensive snaps. This is what we expected, right? He was never supposed to start. But I think that this is essential experience for him that he's gaining right now. I think that ultimately, even if he struggles now, it's okay because they need him to be able to start in the future. I think he has that long-term projection if they want to go that route with him. He has the capabilities and the athleticism to actually be a starter. Really, really quick feet, good hands. He's a very solid run blocker. He just has to get better in pass protection. I think that's the number one thing right now is giving him those reps so he can start to iron out his weaknesses. His hands and feet sometimes can be a little bit discombobulated in terms of like they just aren't connected to one another. So those, I think, those variables will be corrected over time. But it's going to take a sizable sample size to actually get that done. But right now, I'd probably give Zudoo a C. I don't think that I've seen anything that's like overwhelmingly like just disappointing. I think this is what we expected, but I would like to see a little bit better in pass protection from him. A third round pick, again, mid round selection, but we see third round picks play well all the time, so I think that we should expect to see improvement over the rest of the season. Cordell Flot, I'm going to give that one a D because I didn't really get that pick from to begin with out of LSU. Really skinny guy. He had a couple opportunities, missed a couple tackles. Wiry. I think that Cordell Flot this season was never supposed to be his, impact season. I think that they looked at him as a future developmental piece that could be great down the line. He's really bouncy in his coverage. He's a good man coverage corner, but he needs a little bit more size. He needs more experience, and he's been injured. So, right now I'm going to give him a D because just really hasn't been able to make an impact. And when he was on the field, he seemed like a liability. But I think that this is more of a developmental piece that over time he will get better. He will provide something for this team. But what are your thoughts on Zudoo and Cordell Flot?
Yeah, I think that both of these players are projects, and this is kind of where we talk about Joe Schoen making draft picks for the future. I don't think that either of these guys were drafted to step in and make an impact in day one. I think what he saw here is upside and potential, but it needs to be harvested, it needs to be grown, right? It's not going to be instant impact from Joshua Zudoo. We always knew that. He wasn't supposed to be thrown into the starting lineup. Unfortunately, I have no idea where Shane Lemieux is. We haven't got an injury update on him in like a month or two, but hopefully we're in the bye week. Maybe he returns from the injured reserve this week and he can make an impact in the second half of the year, because at the end of the day, Joshua Zudoo should not be on the field right now. He's on the field because of all the injuries that the Giants have suffered at that position. This is a player that the Giants absolutely wanted to sit, let him learn for the full rookie season, maybe in years 2 or 3, enter the lineup as a potential starter. I don't think he was meant to be a potential starter this year, but here he is starting games, playing significant amount of snaps. But there is a positive to draw from that. Experiential learning. Sometimes the best way to learn how to play the position is to go out there, get your ass kicked, and learn from that. So that's valuable for Joshua Zudoo. He's getting his ass kicked for sure. But if he continues to do that, he might learn how to not get his ass kicked. And I think that's exciting. So I think this is valuable experience for him. And hopefully, again, in years 2 or 3, he can put it all together and learn. I know I keep saying this about a lot of these rookies, but that's really how it is. You never know how a rookie class truly is until the second or third year that they've been on the team. And we'll see how many of these players are still on the team in the second or third year, because that's also something that happens with rookie classes. A lot of times those guys get cut after a year. So same thing goes for Cordell Flot. I don't think the Giants ever wanted him to see the field this year. I think that when you look at him, he's very skinny, he's tall, and he's got some tools that you could definitely use if he's able to kind of learn how to use them, basically. Because a guy that skinny and that tall entering the NFL in year 1, it's just you're asking for injuries, and injuries is what he suffered. He hasn't been able to stay on the field for the full extended amount of time. He hasn't been ready to play. It's a project here. Both of these guys, they're projects. So over the second half of the year, they're gonna get their playing time. Let's see if they can make some slight incremental improvements week to week, day to day. And if they can, then I'll feel confident in them going into year 2 of their career that yes, one day they'll be able to make a solid impact. But right now, both of these guys, underdeveloped, not ready for the NFL game, in my opinion. They're going to have a huge share of struggles for each of them over the course of the second half of the season. So we'll see if they're able to develop and learn from that stuff. Again, experiential learning is very crucial. They're going to get their asses kicked, but what do they do in response? Do they learn from that, or do they give up? And I doubt they'll give up. I think that Joe Schoen found a lot of high-quality guys in this draft class. So give these guys some time, and hopefully eventually they'll pan out.
Yeah, I agree. And, looking at those fourth round picks, some good players there, and Daniel Bellinger and Dane Belton, interestingly, our fourth round picks have been a lot more, I guess, bigger contributors than our third round picks. Bellinger over Zudoo. I mean, Dane Belton and Cordell Flot. Both, Bellinger and Belton have been pretty solid on both offense and defense. Losing Bellinger proved to be a significant blow to our run defense, rather our run blocking. So, losing him definitely felt significant, and, his red zone capabilities obviously were missed. Daniel Bellinger, offers Daniel Jones a security blanket underneath. He's a very good pass catcher. He was really taking some big steps forward over the past couple weeks as a traditional receiver, from that tight end set. But ultimately, Bellinger has been very impressive, San Diego State alum, and, really stepped up and took on a pretty significant role right off the bat. And I've been very impressed with him, and I'm excited to see his growth and development when he returns from that eye injury. They say 2 to 6 weeks of rehab time. He's already been through 1 week of that. So, maybe he comes back by week 12 or 11 or something like that, which would be really, really great. And I think that his progress has definitely been notable. One of the better players on this team right now. I'd probably give him a B plus, just because I think there is a little bit left to be desired. I don't want to sit here and give him an A plus or an A, because I think that, his receiving game is still developing and there is a lot left to prove and learn for him. But I think a B plus is pretty fair, and he has proved his worth up to this point in time. Now, Dane Belton, on the other hand, really nice little safety there. Not the best in man coverage, but he's a good zone safety. He can get into the box. He can hit guys hard. He can stop the run pretty aggressively. He almost had a pick six in this last game if it wasn't tipped at the line of scrimmage. So Belton's made an impact. I like him a lot. I think that he's a player that is going to continue to develop in this system and scheme. He's a long-term fit at safety. He could even end up replacing Julian Love after the season if they don't bring him back, which is an interesting discussion we'll have another day. Because obviously we are a huge fan of Julian Love, and we think that retaining him should be a priority. But, Belton may be there to supplement that loss if he does end up walking. So we'll see what happens with Jay Love. Nonetheless, Belton, I'll probably sit here and give him a B minus. I think that missed a little bit of time. Took him a little time to get eased into the system, but otherwise been very impressed. And I think that for a fourth round pick to walk away with a B minus at the bye week, I think that's pretty impressive. And his contributions are only becoming more prominent, and they're starting to utilize him a little bit more efficiently in this defense.
Yeah, for these guys, I think both of them have made a tremendous impact through the first portion of the season as rookies. Very impressive performances. If I had to grade each of them, I'd go ahead and give Daniel Bellinger actually an A minus. If you look at Pro Football Focus, he's graded as one of the best tight ends in the NFL right now. Not just rookies, but all tight ends in the NFL. And when you watch his tape and you see what he's done for the Giants offense, that definitely rings true. It's not just PFF, throwing stuff at the wind, right? Daniel Bellinger has actually been very impactful for the Giants offense, whether it be as a receiver, whether it be as a run blocker, especially. I mean, the dude has gone out there and looked like an offensive tackle at times. He was huge for the Giants offense. Losing him is really disappointing. I hope he's able to return by season's end. I especially hope that if the Giants do make it to the playoffs, Daniel Bellinger is able to re-enter the lineup for the postseason, because he was making a ginormous impact on the Giants offense. This was arguably our best rookie through the first half of the season. So yeah, definitely high praise for Daniel Bellinger, high praise to Joe Shane for finding another gem in the middle rounds at the tight end position, as he did with Dawson Knox over in Buffalo. But then when we transition over to Dane Belton, I'd give him at least a B. I think that he's been really solid as well. If you look at the stats on him, he's played a pretty extended amount of time. Obviously had the injury in the summer, missed an extended portion of training camp, but didn't really miss a step when he entered the regular season. So I've been impressed with him as well. You mentioned Julian Love. I think they have similar playing styles. They can do similar things on the field, but I think that working in tandem, they work really, really well. So I like what Dane Belton's brought to the field as well. This fourth round was very impressive, already making an instant impact from these rookies. So again, you're looking towards the future with some of these young guys. Bellinger and Belton look like they're absolute building blocks for the Giants on offense and defense going forward here. So very impressed with what Joe Shane was able to do here in the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane to get that much, value out of fourth round picks as the rookies too. So that's pretty impressive. Looking at our fifth round pick, Micah McFadden, obviously didn't play much, but actually had a pretty big impact. Took a lot of Tate Crowder snaps against Seattle. He picked up his first sack of the season, had a couple of tackles. I was pretty impressed by the Indiana standout. So, he plays linebacker, so we obviously need linebacker support. Why not throw in our rookie? They probably were waiting a little bit. They got Jalen Smith, brought in Landon Collins, kind of waiting to see if Micah McFadden was ready for the opportunity, and they finally offered it up to him, and he ran with with it. He had a great game. So I think right now you're looking at Micah McFadden probably making a much bigger impact the rest of the way and taking some snaps away from Tay Crowder. But with that being said, it's just too soon for me to really give him a grade. I don't think there's enough sample size based on what we've seen from him. I'd say give him a B minus, just an average grade. But I'll tell you what, I think that he has a lot of potential too, especially in this Wink Martindale defense that loves to blitz those linebackers. He can be a prominent figure in that sense, in that regard. And I think that, ultimately that will start to become his MO as we get, closer to the end of the season. He's going to really take on a bigger role in blitzing from that linebacker spot and helping to stop the run. He's a really physical guy, solid against the run, just needed time to develop, coming from Indiana, a little bit of a smaller school comparably to some of the others that we have on this rookie class. So, I think that it took a little bit of time to get accustomed to the NFL, but the impact he can have in his physical nature is definitely something that Wink Martindale is going to love moving forward. So, what are your thoughts about Micah McFadden and the impact he made in week 8 against Seattle?
Yeah, he made a great impact in week 8, kind of taking playing time away from Tay Crowder. I said that going into that game, the linebackers were the key to winning. And unfortunately, we didn't get the win. That was mainly because of special teams and the gaffes on the punt returns. But when you look at what the defense did, they didn't play that bad. I think they did their job, honestly. They were just put in some tough situations. The Giants actually won the time of possession in that game, which shows that the defense was getting the Seattle Seahawks offense off the field. Our special teams and offense just were not able to capitalize, unfortunately. But Micah McFadden particularly played a solid game, had his first career NFL sack, and I like the way he plays, and I think he is a perfect scheme fit. Again, another one of those guys who might not play the full extent this season, might not be, fully involved in the defensive game plan, but you love his projections, right? You love the tools that he has, the slight performances, he's getting slight playing time here and there, and the performances that he's putting together in those small sample sizes, they're impressive. And it's something that you can build on going into years 2 and 3. So I think that this was another pick that was a long-term plan here for him to fit into Wink Martindale's defense. Pray to God Wink Martindale doesn't get a head coaching job this offseason. Hopefully he's here for a few years and then some, right? And if that is the case, Wink Martindale can continue to develop guys just like Micah McFadden. A perfect scheme fit. Love the way he plays, making an impact as a rookie. This is the exact kind of guy that you want to build around your defense, right? So you want to keep building with this guy. So I really like Micah McFadden, what he brings to Wink Martindale's defensive scheme. And I think that Wink Martindale is going to figure out ways to make him more impactful over the course of the second half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's only what we can expect. And moving forward here, we have another 5th-round pick, DJ Davidson. Did a pretty solid job filling in for Leonard Williams when he was injured. I think he's also injured right now. And then Marcus McKethan, another 5th-round pick. And we'll group in Darian Beavers because he also suffered a season-ending injury. So McKethan and Beavers both suffered torn ACLs. And Beavers would be starting right now for the record. McKethan, another UNC guy, along with a Zudoo, bigger, offensive lineman. A little bit slower, but, ultimately a decent talent that maybe they could, develop into something as a reserve. But Beavers would be starting. I think that he was going to have a pretty solid season, showed some pretty high IQ coming out of Cincinnati, can do a lot of different things. Not the most athletic guy in the world, but his IQ is off the charts and he's pretty physical. So I like that about him. And DJ Davidson out of Arizona State, solid player as well that I thought, played well when he had opportunities. So I think hopefully that injury isn't anything too serious and he can return and continue making an impact. But I think, you can't really grade these guys, obviously, because 2 of them are injured. DJ Davidson, I haven't seen enough of him, but I do think that some of these late round picks could be impact players, specifically Davidson and Beavers. What are your thoughts on Beavers specifically, just in terms of when he comes back from that ACL tear? Do you think he is probably going to compete for a starting linebacker role?
Well, honestly, I hope not, because I hope that the Giants really improve their linebacking core this offseason, because not a lot of talent there, a lot of draft picks in this upcoming class, and a lot of money to spend. So hopefully they find some quality veterans who can fit into this defensive scheme over the offseason and provide an upgrade. But when Darian Beavers comes back, I also do hope that he makes his way into the lineup, because I hope that no matter what talent we add in the offseason, he's better than all of them, right? I always root for every Giants player to be the best player of all time. So Darian Beavers, I hope he is. I hope he's the best linebacker that's ever graced an NFL football field, right? So Darian Beavers, again, looked really good in the preseason, as you mentioned. Devastating injury. He was in line to start for the Giants defense, and I think he was going to make a serious impact this year. Like, he was looking that good throughout the summer. So very disappointing that we're not able to see what Darian Beavers had in store for us for his rookie season. But going forward, again, another player that the Giants can continue to build with, right? Just a player to keep in the fold. Just know that he's coming back next year when he's fully healthy. If he can return to the form that he was showing over this offseason, maybe we can build with him and he can be a quality starter in the Giants defense next year with Wink Martindale. We know Wink Martindale knows how to get the most out of every single player. So Darian Beaver is re-entering the lineup next year. Wink Martindale's still here. He's going to get the most out of him. Hopefully he can step in, make a big impact in year 2. That'll basically be his pseudo rookie season since he didn't really have a rookie season here. But it's not like we've never seen that happen before, right? Let's think back to an all-time New York Giants legend, Victor Cruz, through the preseason, absolute dominant force in his rookie year, tears his ACL, comes back in year 2, absolute dominant force in the regular season, Giants go on to win a Super Bowl, right? So that's totally possible for Darian Beavers to have been the real deal. Just because it was preseason, you can't just write him off and say, it was preseason. You don't know if he's actually good. He was maybe just getting lucky, whatever. No, we've seen it happen before where a Giants rookie is very good in the preseason and they translate that to the NFL, to the regular season the following year. So hopefully that is the case with Darian Beavers. Again, I know that this is a position of need for the Giants. They're going to try and add some talent there, maybe even for the rest of this regular season and postseason and into the offseason. But Darian Beavers might be that hidden X factor that steps back into the lineup next year and is that upgrade for the New York Giants defense at that linebacker position. So again, very impressed with what he did in the preseason. I wish we could have gotten to see him play some regular season action. But again, long-term building blocks that Joe Schoen has gotten here, and I'm very excited to see what the future has in store for Darian Beavers.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives. Maybe you could leave your grades in the comment section regarding how you grade each of these rookies up to this point, or at least the ones that have made an impact and have played and not injured. But appreciate everyone tuning into this episode today. Tiposaurus Rex, shout out for the good luck, and make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.